Well, thank you. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Council and Committee meeting of the Town of Petawawa for April the 12th, 2021. Welcome, everyone. It's a beautiful day out there, and spring, it would appear, has sprung. So hopefully it continues for a few weeks ahead as we enjoy this weather. I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest on any of the matters before us this evening. Having seen none, there's no presentations. The first item is general matters. And I think, David, you want to talk to us about spending some money. David, where are you?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, there you are in the center. The big Town of Petawawa sign behind you. Way to go.
I'm just going to share my screen here if everyone can see my screen.
Got it.
Okay. So I'll just go through a few different pictures first to kind of illustrate the issue at hand, and then I'll go over some of the possible solutions, and then 3 different options that I've laid out. So, we're putting in an application for funding for a multi-use pathway along Laurentian Drive. And so it would run from Civic Center right through to Ravenwood Crescent. And so in the spring, what we did was we took a walk with the County of Renfrew and my staff, and kind of highlighted some of the issues that we can foresee along the existing pathway. And the existing pathway is 1.5 meters. The new multi-use pathway will be 3 meters and will be built both for cyclists and pedestrians. So the pictures right here you have is, it's hard to see this first one that I'm hovering my cursor over, but there's quite a bit of a depression here where water does pond, and you know, that's a certain grade issue that will have to be overcome with any installation along that side. This next picture is very typical along that stretch from Limestone right through to Silky. You have a lot of low-lying houses. The sidewalk, the existing sidewalk is very low, the pathway, and so you have ponding. Again, you can see that in the next 2 pictures also. This is right at the corner of Laurentian Drive and Silky. So then as we continue on, this is a section that is just around Ravenwood. And again, an area where there's considerable ponding in this area. We're able to raise this up to match the existing, so we don't see that this as being much of an issue. So that's in regards to the ponding issues. A couple of the issues that we do have in that area is, and I'll just slip to one of the other pictures here to highlight. So just in this area here is we have kind of a reduced, maybe not a reduced right of way, but the actual road is shifted more towards the east. So I have a lot more room on the west side towards the Terrace Park than I do towards the Highlands subdivision. Over in this area is really the predominantly where it's very low. And, you know, so there's several locations along here that are ponding and restricted in regards to, you know, where we can flow water to. And then over here in this area, when we get into Ravenwood, we have a little bit more area. Actually, the right of way is a little bit wider in that area and provides us a little bit more options in regards to what we can do with this multi-use pathway. So the other thing too, when we're taking a look at the different options is the safety of the kids. So here I have a couple of maps showing the walking requirements for the various children. So this is St. Francis of Assisi, JK and Senior K. It's very isolated to just around the leader lane, But once you go out to grade 1 to 6, and then even if you include grade 7 walking web, so it takes a good part of Sunset Crescent area. And so would be a lot of kids that would be walking Laurentian Drive. What we encourage them to do is walk through the internal portion of the subdivision, but even on a daily basis, you'll see some kids, not very many, but some kids walking on that. And then also the concern is the speed in that area. So those are really some of the challenges that we have in regards to putting in the multi-use pathway. Now I'd like to switch to kind of what different solutions there are out there when we're talking about providing cycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So this was safety performance for bike infrastructure in Canada. This was put together by the Transportation Association of Canada. And certainly, ranking very high is your off-road bicycle facilities. So that would be similar to what we have along Civic Center Road. We have the multi-use pathway, but it's well set off of the road. And then you go into protected bike lanes. So that would be something like you'd have either like concrete wall or some type of bollard, something protecting, and then you get into the buffered bicycle lanes in regards to the safety. We also highlighted this when we had done our active transportation plan. So this is an excerpt from the Petawawa Active Transportation Plan, and it goes to from comfort level of the the individual road users from a single bike route that's basically a share-o, that's what these are here, and basically advertising to the motorist to share the road with the cyclist. And so that goes all the way over to the multi-use pathway. And so that's what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to achieve, a comfort level with the pedestrians, the cyclists, and the vehicles, the drivers that are using the road. So all, taking really in consideration of all users of the right-of-way. And so when you're talking about multi-use pathway, again, in our study, we identified that certainly the off-road was the best option, but the in boulevard is another option that provides a great amount of comfort level to all the users, and so you have this a little bit of a buffer, and that can be paved. It could be grass, it could be various different things. Certainly grass doesn't work if it's a small buffered area of around 1 meter or so. So that's what we're heading for. That's our goal there, the multi-use pathway with a buffered zone. So when we get to take a look at some of the options that we talked about with the county and Renfrew and the staff, and again, this is just not in any specific order. It's just the way that we had discussed them on site. So this is the first option that we talked about, and would be placing the multi-use pathway over the existing pathway from Civic Center right over to Limestone. And so that would be a 3 meter wide asphalt pathway, and you'd have approximately a meter and a half between that and the asphalt road. Then it would cross over, since this blue area is identifying the existing path, and with all the issues with regards to drainage and that, we could jump over to the other side and then put a 2.5 meter multi-use pathway tied directly with the road and have an additional 1 meter of paved separation, that buffer. And so we'd be adding 3.5 meters to that side, and you know, that would provide that buffer. We take that all the way through to Ravenwood, and then we flip it back over to the other side, to the west side, where we would go with the 3 meters, and we would put in a couple extra dry wells. So I think the things to highlight in this is that we'd be looking at a retaining wall in this area. We'd be looking at some additional dry wells in this area. And then along here, it would be on the opposite side, so the east side of Laurentian Drive. And this would be situated such that when the snow operation is going, that they could actually clean a portion of it off with the blade of the snowplow. If I go back to my report, I provided a couple pictures here with, I just roughly painted in what this would look like on site. I find a visual is a lot better than words or me speaking. So here's that section in between Civic Center and Limestone. And so this area here, you can see the existing pathway, which is approximately 1.5 meters. So these two white lines would delineate the extent of the new 3 meter multi-use pathway. And then this would be the buffer that would be left, which would be gravel. What I've indicated here also is the County of Renfrew would have scheduled at this point the resurfacing of Laurentian Drive, and that would be in 2029, and that would include a 1 meter shoulder, paved shoulder. And so it'd be questionable if they would just go 1 meter, or in this case, they might go, you know, 1.5 and connect up to our multi-use pathway. But there would be that buffer zone that you would still see in that location. And then on the other side, and this would be the stretch from Limestone right through to Sunset Crescent, you'd have, this would all be paved right from this white line to the extent right through and match up to the existing asphalt of Laurentian Drive. This would be a 1 meter paved buffer and hashed appropriately. And then this would be your 2.5 meter multi-use pathway. We went to 2.5 meters on the east side just because of some of the constraints that we had in the ditching in this area. And so that's option 1 of these 3 options. Option 2 sees basically the multi-use pathway continue right over the existing 1.5 meter pathway. So similar configuration from the Civic Center right through to Limestone. We continue that right through up to right up to Limestone here. And this is the area that I've put a cloud around where we would have to put in several dry wells. We'd also be looking at a retaining wall in this location because this is that one area that has a great big grade differential. So if you've traveled along Laurentian Drive, there's that grade differential here. And we need the retaining wall along here because of the hydro pole that's in the way. It's not in the way, but just to support it so that we can butt our multi-use pathway right against it. And then the part from Sunset right through to Ravenwood, same treatment as option number 1. So really the only change is what we do over here, which would include some additional retaining wall and also some dry wells. The caution with this one is that because there is localized ponding, and it mainly is just in the springtime, If we have severe rain, for sure, there'll be some water for a little bit, but it dries up fairly quickly because of the Petawawa sand. So you still could see in the spring some isolated flooding. We would try to place and grade as best we could, but because the area is so low that we still might end up with some minimal flooding. Not as bad as what we have right now, but and it might be a couple years of working it out such that we address all those. But there's still that caution that we would still have a little bit of flooding. The third option is really leave the existing pathway on the west side, and we could leave that existing pathway in place in this area where we have the ponding, and then just kind of close it off in the springtime. We have different options there, and then construct the multi-use pathway totally on the east side from Civic Center Road right through to Ravenwood. And that's similar to option number 1, which had the pathway only for a short portion. So this would be the complete strength or complete length from Civic Center right through to Sunset. The other thing I didn't mention too, in regards to option number 1 and option number 3, is that we're not suggesting that we install them right away, but there could be that possibility in the future of creating crosswalks, right, one at Civic Center and another one at Sunset, Ravenwood, to enable cyclists and pedestrians to get across. So that would be 2 different sections there that we have for crosswalks. So that's really the 3 options that is laid out in the report. So I've gone through over some of the advantages and disadvantages. The pricing, it's very similar in regards to crossing or pricing. Option number 3, is shown here as being the lowest cost at this point, but that's leaving the existing pathway in place. And so if we don't do anything, like we don't raise it and just leave it the way it is, that would be the cost. But if we would put in some dry wells and maybe raise up a portion of it or remove it totally, that certainly price would go up. Option number 1 here includes a little bit in regards to the dry wells on that. And then option 2 is your one that would have the retaining wall in the 2 locations and approximately 5 different dry wells. And so I also included here what the future costing could be. So if we install some crosswalks, it really depends on what type of pedestrian crossover that we put in place, but it could go up to $25,000, $30,000 per crosswalk. And then talking about dealing with some of the issues with the existing, it could add in another $10,000. So if you're looking at option number 1, it could add in another $10,000 just to deal with that existing walkway. In regards to the financial, so we've put in the funding, and we're very optimistic that we'll receive the funding for $100,000, and that's through the ISEP, the COVID-19 Resilient Infrastructure Stream. In addition to that, we did put in some funding for improvements along Laurentian Drive of $45,000. So we have $145,000, so it would really take care of any of these options that we put forward. So just seeking council's directions, a lot of information, and just happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. A couple of questions from me. Snow storage on all 3 options are adequate within that 1, 2, and 3 on both sides of the road?
Yeah, certainly, and a great question. In regards to snow storage, certainly any option that we go east is certainly preferable because we do have all that room along the park that we can just blow the snow right into the ditch there. So there's a lot more options in regards to option number 3 that would be, or option number 1 where we do a portion of it along the east side. In regards to the west side, it's just an area right now currently that we put a little bit more extra attention to, and so we do snow removal along there, and so we've done that for the last 3 or 4 years, and we would just continue that.
Okay, one other question, then I open it up. Crosswalks. We have a series of crosswalks in the I'll call lower tier municipality, our roads, with yellow stripes across the road and little signs saying crosswalks. That's not what you're suggesting or proposing in the future for something here. It's a more elaborate type of crosswalk type situation.
Yeah, we'd have to go do the analysis of what would be required, but I suspect with the traffic volume and the pedestrians that we'd be looking at more of one that that does. Yes, well, not necessarily fully signalized where you'd have a like traffic control on that, but it would certainly have the flashing lights, when someone presses the buttons and that. So
Okay.
it's a little bit more than just painted lines on the pavement and signage.
Okay, and will the multi-purpose facility be separated for walkers and bicycles, or will it be just whomever's on there, you pass on the left, you pass on the right, or whatever it is? Is that what your thoughts are with this?
Yeah, it'd be similar to the Algonquin Trail, that paved portion that we have there.
Okay.
We just have that as being, everyone share the area. Along Civic Center Road, we did paint a line down the middle. One side is supposed to be pedestrians, one side is supposed to be cyclists. People go on either side, and they share very adequately with people with strollers and bicyclists and pedestrians. So I think either option works, but the more suggestion would be is to have something similar to the Algonquin Trail, where there is no line painted in the middle, but there is the signage saying that pedestrians and cyclists can share the space.
Yeah, it seems to work quite well on the paved portion. Yep. I haven't received any feedback as far as complaints are concerned, but it seems to work very well. So thank you for that. Open it up for members of committee. I see Murray, and then Teresa, then James. Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, thank you for bringing the information package forward. For sure, lots of information. So I travel that road quite a bit, and I always keep an eye on that. And I think the biggest concern on the west side is the drainage, of course, because of the just the level of the road to the trail. I'm thinking, I just don't like the idea of crossing back and forth. I like the idea of maybe of a crosswalk in 1 or 2 areas, but I still like to see maybe that trail with proper drainage, the proper level, widening it out. That would be my choice for safety. There's a lot of youth on that road. I just don't like them going back and forth, especially with the speed sometimes on Laurentian Drive and the traffic flow. We all know that it's very, very heavy. That would be my thoughts. We may have to tweak that as we go along, and babysit a little bit more to get the drains open in the spring, bring that level up of the grade of the trail, and that's my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too do not like the idea of having a crisscross across that stretch of road. The path should be on one side or on the other. Having been a longtime resident of both Ravenwood and Selly Street, and walking that path myself and meeting lots of other folks, there's a lot of traffic on that path, and certainly I think the safety has to be paramount, and I like the idea of not crossing as well. Certainly the issue of the grading, it's a huge drop from Laurentian down to the pathway, particularly close to Civic Center Road. So I guess I just have one question, David, if you don't mind, in regards to the existing pathway on the west side. Would the process be to add to that pathway, or would you be pulverizing the existing pathway? I just want to be clear on that, if you could, please.
Yeah, so the initial thought would be to remove the existing asphalt, provide a little bit more granulars, and then place the lift of asphalt on top of it. When we were out actually walking it with the county and with my staff, there is some locations actually that we can just pave over the existing because of the grade difference, and we want to make sure that the crossfall from the road and across the pathway is meet accessible standards. So in some cases, we might be just paving right over the existing. So that would give us a really strong base.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, James?
Thank you, Mayor Sweet. Well, I guess I'll have to be the outlier here because I like the idea of crosswalks. And I'm pretty certain the residents along Laurentian like the idea of crosswalks as well, based on what I've been hearing in the last little while. Laurentian has been a perennial speeding problem in the town of Petawawa for as long as I've been keeping an eye on speeds, since at least 2007. And I'm sure it was speeds were up there prior to that too. So there have been requests in the past for crosswalks along Laurentian. And I sort of like the idea of working them in with the multi-use pathway. I think it could, and not everybody lives on one side of the road, so people are going to cross the road anyway to get to this path if it's on one side for the entire length of it. So, just my thoughts.
Thank you, James. Just so you'll know, it's not part of the costing at this point in time. I think David indicated that it would probably be somewhere in the region of, if we put two in, another $50,000 or 50% above there's $100,000 that we received. So it's not in there at this point in time, as I'm sure you are aware. It is a proposed coming forward in the future, that type of situation. I presume, David, you want to try and do this year. Is that correct? Is that when the funding has to be spent, sometime before? Or X number of days or X whatever?
Yeah, I think when the funding is announced, there'll be deadlines. I'm not sure in regards to if it's at the end of the year, but the idea certainly would be to get the first portion this year, and it was also included in our tender for the asphalt. So we've already got a good price for asphalt this year.
Okay, that's good. Gary, I think I saw your hand go up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a big fan of option number 2, Dave. I think it's important, and I agree with Murray and Teresa that we keep these kids on one side of the road. As James said, it's been a speeding problem on Laurentian for quite a few years now, and the volume of traffic is pretty high. So I think we keep these kids on one side of the road with spending a little extra money to put in the dry wells and the retaining walls. I think it's important we get this right the first time. Just one concern I have is if it's 3 meters and then the county eventually puts their 1 meter paved shoulder, there's still a little bit of a buffer between our 3 meters and their paved shoulder, because I wouldn't want a situation like we have on Schwantz Road where there's no curb between the road and the sidewalk. So I just want to make sure that if we have a 3 meter, there's still a little bit of a buffer between that and the county's 1 meter paved shoulder. So option number 2, all the way for me.
Okay, so just to respond, I'll just share my screen again. And So what we'd be looking at is this, if option 2 would be, and so you're right, there'd be that 3 meters, and then there would be this paved shoulder by the county. I would suggest that they would not leave this gravel, and so then this complete area would be paved. So you would have pavement right from the existing right over to here. So that would be completely paved. The problem with leaving a small little area like this will be exactly what you've got right here. There's lots of carryover of the gravel in that. You know, especially during the winter time, you'll get that gravel and certainly the sand and salt that we put on the road. But throughout the year, any gravel and Swans Road is a good example of what it was before. We did have this small little area, and then we had the asphalt pathway, and we constantly had gravel onto our sidewalk. So you'd probably see in the future, and again, that's going to be at least 2029, unless something changes with the capital plan with the county of Renfrew. But so at first you'd see pavement 3 meters, and then this would be gravel. And then once the county does their improvements, I would suspect that this would all be paved.
Hey, David, that's the area that I thought would be a bit of a snow storage area with the
Correct.
county. That's the
Yeah.
area that I was worried about, particularly even going forward to pave it in 2029. They're going to be shoving snow onto your 3 meter wide sidewalk, and we'll be required to take it off. And would we have storage capacity on the other side of the 3 meters? That's a concern. Tom?
Yeah, I just want to comment. I'm all in favor of option number 2. I don't like the idea of crosswalks going across Laurentian Drive. I think it could turn into a disaster. It costs us a lot of money and a lot of headaches. But I know we'd like to be able to get people back and forth across that road, but with all the issues we've had so far, I'm not comfortable with it. I think I'd like to go and make sure we have the proper drainage, proper retaining walls, and stay on the west side all the way. And I'd like to just echo Gary's comments about that little rumble strip or whatever you want to call it in between. We have it on Schwantz Road. We also have it down on Victoria Street, where we went straight across with no indication where the sidewalk is. And I think it's a little daunting for some of the people. I don't know how best to address it, but I think it's something that should be looked at whenever we go ahead and do it. I don't know if we could we don't want to put a drainage curb in there or anything else. So I'm not sure how you would look at it, but I think it should definitely be taken into consideration.
Okay.
I'll just mention. So the one thing that you had mentioned there, Councillor Mones, was the rumble strip. So I know that the county has looked at that in other locations. And we talked about it on Laurentian Drive, and they haven't gone to rumble strips anywhere else. But the last conversation I did have with the county, that they might look at it on Laurentian Drive if that's something that the town would like to see. And we're talking 2029, so there's certainly a lot of experience that will be gained over the next little while in regards to rumble strips and how they operate, and making sure that it's safe, not only for the drivers but also for cyclists, because that's certainly one of the issues with the rumble strips, is the cyclists don't care for them too much. But yeah, I understand that having that buffer of some type, it certainly would be painted, but it's also nice to have something additional there.
So David, just to follow up on Tom and Gary's, has the county ruled out doing anything this year? It's like anything else. It's much easier and quicker when you're doing it during construction to put what is it, 2 feet, 3 feet in there as part of the contract? How much something like that costs? Or have they actually said, no, we're not doing it?
Yeah, like they've got their capital program all set. You know, if option number 2 is the one that we selected, and you know, and we're talking only about the area, I would say, from Civic Center Road right through past Limestone, and basically just before that, there's a little bit of a grade difference going down Laurentian. That's the area that I would say that they could put in that, say, 1 or 1.5 meter paved shoulder and be done with it. Because once you get past that, then there's more room. There's a little bit, like I said, the Laurentian Drive kind of is reshifted more center to the right of way. And so you wouldn't see it the complete length. So no, it'd be certainly that, you know, if that would be a solution that the council would like, I would certainly go back to them. They haven't said outright no. I know that they've gotten some really great prices, as we did for asphalt.
Mhm.
A lot of their projects are asphalt based, and so I think they do have some additional money. But if this is a priority or not, it certainly is beneficial for them because, you know, when you do pave that shoulder, it protects that asphalt. And so instead of 2029, you know, maybe they can get even a few more years out of it before they have to repave it, and at least they wouldn't have to repave that
well-
section. So there is some benefit throughout everyone.
Yeah.
But so I certainly would go back to them and ask them.
I think it's well worth the effort if we go with number 2 to ask them to reconsider, and would they partner with us on that and see what they actually absolutely say. And the worst case scenario is no. If that's the decision of committee, they say no, then we have to deal with that at that point in time. Further questions of David on this particular situation? So I guess we're looking for direction if there's no further questions as to which option that David has presented you want to move forward on. You've got 1, 2, and 3. Let me ask, see if I can narrow it down a little bit. Number 1, is there any desire to do number 1? Nothing, okay, so we'll go to number 2. So is there a desire to do number 2? 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4, let's try number 3. There's 1 with number 3, okay. Then if it's number 2 that you want to move forward on, I think Don, or you want a motion, Don, to this effect? If you're willing to make a motion on that, I see Murray saying yes, I'll move that. And it's seconded by Teresa. She's more than willing to do number 2. Okay. 1 moved by Murray, seconded by Teresa. Any discussion on that we do go with number 2? I'd like to put a little caveat when there are a direct staff to continue to talk with the county beyond that, but that's not necessarily a condition of going on number 2, but it's just something behind the scenes type of deal. I think that would be something that we should really do. If there's no further questions on the options, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? There's 1 opposed. The motion is carried for number 2. Thank you very much, David. Look forward to seeing this coming forward, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Okay. With that, then, there's nothing else that we need from this here. We'll go then to the fire department report. Deputy Chief, how are you tonight, Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm doing well.
Pardon me?
Doing very well, thank you.
Okay, you've got the March report. It's your report. You fire ahead.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, members of council. The activity report for March 2021. We had a total of 13 incidents that the department responded through the month. We had a vehicle fire on March 2nd. It was a tow truck fire. When the crews arrived, the fire was out. We just assisted with making sure that the hot spots were controlled, and then we returned to station. On March 2nd, we also responded for a carbon monoxide alarm sounding. The crews checked the residents and they couldn't find anything, but the residents were complaining of some medical problems. So we contacted the county paramedics and they came in and attended the patients. On the 12th, we responded for another CO activation. It was due to a furnace, and we recommended that the furnace be checked out by a certified technician. And the same thing on March 20th, another one on Wilson Road, where there was actually CO within the residence, and the crews shut down isolated the furnace and ventilated the structure. On the 30th of March, we responded for another CO activation. I couldn't find any readings, so they ventilated the home just as precautionary measures and left the scene. On March 3rd, we responded for a natural gas leak. It was due to a large 3-inch line that was severed. The crews just made the area safe, eliminated all ignition sources, and then waited on Enbridge to attend. They eventually arrived and isolated the leak. We had a strange smell on March 5th. They searched the residence, but they couldn't find anything. They found that the smell originated outside the home. There was a smell of gas on March 11th. The crews responded to. Again, they searched the home and they found out that the floor drains in the laundry room were the traps were dry and sent like a methane gas smell through the home. So they were able to isolate that incident. We had a fire alarm on March 11th where the crews responded. It was due to a power outage. They were able to clear. We had a power line on fire on March 11th due to a storm that came through the area. It was our first thunderstorm of the year. There was a motor vehicle collision that we responded to and assist with suppression and some of the cleanup. And again, we had another motor vehicle collision where the crews had to extricate one patient and then isolated the scene and returned to station. We had an open air burn on March 29th due to a fire behind an industrial establishment, and the crews had the OPP attend to help with the scene, but we extinguished the fire and there's charges pending. For the fire prevention activity report, there's not much to report. We just had minor inspections, a lot of request inspections. There was a couple of meetings that the chief fire inspector attended, and of course some administration that went along with it. For the residential CO and smoke alarms, so we had a total of there was 51, fire prevention check 51 residents, suppression was 7 for 58 in total. That brings our numbers to 76 for the year. And for open air burning permits, there was no change, just a lot of renewals. We're up to 11, and we're still at 923, but due to the COVID, we're shut down for fire pit inspections until it gets lifted, and then our inspectors will be out with that. For training, our crews conducted some theory-based fire dynamics. The fire dynamics on structural firefighting, flow path, all safety parameters on how to understand how the fire is burning or what the structure is telling us. We did incorporate the SLICE RS, which the crews are now operating on, which is an acronym for how the steps to a structure fire or a fire. And we also did hose deployment off the trucks on different types of attack lines. We also did fire officer training that was conducted March 23rd, where we had just 4 officers attend, and we went through guidelines and command and control, fire officer filling out papers for fire officers and their reporting. For maintenance, we had some vehicle inspections. 2 of our vehicles got the safeties done. 1 had to go for leaf springs. For buildings, just minor repairs. We had to send all our bottles away for hydrostatic testing. That's due every 5 years. And we had our forestry equipment that is now back on the trucks and ready for our forestry firefighting season that's here upon us. For the fire chief's comments, the fire chief participated in the Renfrew County Fire Chief's Zoom meeting on March 3rd. The chief also participated with an Ontario Fire Marshal John Pegg Zoom meeting on the 11th and participated with the Ontario Association Fire Chief webinar on the province emergency preparedness response unit. That was on the 23rd. And that concludes my report, activity report for March 2001.
Thank you, Craig. I'll open it up for questions of the report. Murray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Craig. And very busy month of detailed work for sure. Lots going on in our town, and I was very interested to read that topic number 1, theory-based fire dynamics. Good job on that. There was some very interesting work here accomplished, and some good training. I just hearing in the county, there's already some municipalities already with fire bans in place with this dryness. No concerns in our town. Everyone's happy.
Yeah, we've been keeping a very close eye on the fire weather indices that we receive at 1 o'clock every day from the Ministry of Natural Resources. We have a bylaw in place that is pretty stringent. We're very happy with it. So there are some municipalities within Renfrew County that have put on a fire ban. We right now don't feel that we require one, but a lot of the fires are surface fires with a lot of grass. There's still a lot of water in the bush. There's some moisture out there, but things are drying up, and we've been keeping an eye on everything in the town, making sure that we're visiting our trouble areas in the town. So no, we haven't put one on, but we've been monitoring the fire weather indices every day.
Thank you, Craig. Good work.
Thank you. Further questions? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Craig, how much would the fine be for burning without a permit, like on Industrial Drive there?
Our fines vary, but 150 plus the surcharge fee on top of that. So it depends on what was burning. If they had a permit, they didn't have a permit, it could be up to $250 as well. So it ranges of what the infraction is.
Thanks.
Further? I see there's a lot of CO issues. Have we got that on your website, or what to do, or how it should be changed or monitored? There's a few there. It only takes one, Craig. Do we have that promoted on our website?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we've been putting out a lot of information through Facebook and in our social media network. And of course, when we go to these calls, we educate the residents. But some of these calls that we go to is it's due to their batteries being faulty, or faulty detectors, or the batteries need to be changed. So like in March, whenever we do the time change, we recommend that we change our smoke alarm batteries and we change our CO batteries. So some of those are some issues. We had one where it was there was CO in the residence just due to a furnace. So we're reminding residents that proper cleaning and maintenance of their furnace and making sure that their furnace is up to date with being inspected. But yeah, we are passing that message through social media and word of mouth.
That's good. Terrific. Thank you for that. Further questions on the report? Having seen none, I need a motion to accept the report, please. James and the deputy. Gary, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Then we'll go now to FDO 1 2021. You're applying for some money.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the province come out with a fire safety grant program for the municipalities in Ontario. There's 444. And the recommendation to council is to approve the submission of an application under the fire safety grant program as identified in the letter of intent, and that the bylaw be brought forward at this meeting to enter into transfer payment agreements with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario, representative of the Ontario Fire Marshal, to receive the grant funds in the amount of $8,800. So we, on March 11th, there was $5 million that was given out, set aside for the grant money for this program, and it's due for training or virtual inspection programs for fire departments. And the fire marshal has recognized that the ability to train during the COVID environments brought with the restrictions is quite difficult for departments. And this money is an opportunity for our department to look at other ways of delivering the training and getting tuition and so on, but also looking at fire inspections, going to a remote virtual inspection program that we're looking at right now. But the grants towards the training costs and the fire inspections. So we're looking to push that through, and there are timeframes with this that we have to meet. We have to have the money spent by August the 1st, and then we have to report back to the fire marshals by the September the 1st. So there's an application towards it. And our department is specifically looking at purchasing some software programs for training and tracking your training, which is about $5,000. There's three companies that we're looking at. We're looking at video equipment such as recorders, audio recorders, tripods, and the costing for fire prevention type of material at $1,500, and then some laptops for training at cost of $2,000. And we're also looking at a little house burning simulator for $300, which brings us to the $8,800 is what we're looking at spending this money on. So we have some ideas that we're throwing around, and I think that this opportunity is going to help with our training and help with our fire prevention and our personnel.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions of the report? Seeing none, we need a motion to accept the recommendation. Tom, seconded by nobody? James, no discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried. Thank you. On your budget, anything you want to tell us about your budget?
No, we haven't moved on too much of our budget right now. We are still looking at getting quotes and all that stuff, but we will be spending some money on our budgetary items very shortly, but there's nothing to report to anything major on our budget.
Okay, fair enough. Any questions from members of committee? Tom?
Craig, how are we coming with the bush truck? Any advance? Oh.
Yeah, bush truck, it's gone out to tender. It's going to be closed on May 4th. And we have it in our tender. Hopefully we can receive it by December, but we're just going to wait and see who's going to put in on the tender. So that's where we're at right now with it.
Okay, thank you for that. Further? And we'll receive this as information for the budget. Okay, thank you very much, Craig. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Community services. Activity report for the month of March. There he is, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so March, a little bit more activity in terms of community services through the month of March. Unfortunately, as that came and went, we're back into another shutdown situation, and so our doors are locked again, and you know, we're doing our best to maintain service and you know, press on until we can free up from the COVID restrictions again. I will highlight a few things though under admin services. We did have our first Town 25th celebration event meeting on March the 16th. We really used it as just an introductory meeting to share ideas. Our next meeting actually is tomorrow, and we hope to start to frame up the event a little bit and start to, you know, make some decisions on some of our ideas and start to move the ball forward in some areas and start to grow the event into what it'll eventually be, you know, over a year from now. Our community services liaison council, I'm sure, saw the introduction from the CAO regarding Brittany Thrasher. She was a successful candidate in our job competition. She started last Thursday, and so she's, you know, has a big learning curve ahead of her to learn her role. Certainly the previous person in that position set the bar high, and but she's has it highly organized. So Brittany's enjoying herself, and we got her lined up with all sorts of different components of training required to do her job, and we'll just keep pressing along. So I'd hope to introduce her to council at some point. Unfortunately, we're in lockdown right now, but as soon as the opportunity presents itself, I'll make sure to get her in front of council. Our arena floor project is cooking right along. We're probably about a week and a half ahead of the construction schedule. The boards have been removed. The last couple days they've spent cutting the floor. So there's a large concrete saw on the floor that's basically cutting a grid into the floor, and then the floor will be removed piece by piece. Today, when I looked at around 3 o'clock, he was down around the blue line. So they got another day or two of cutting to do, and then removal will start. So no issues. Our construction meetings have been very smooth, and nothing really to report other than everything's going along as planned. I'll also reference the species at risk application. So as council's aware, we are going to repair the boat ramp at the launch at Petawawa Point this summer. It's our plan to do that when water is at its low point. It's typically around end of July and early August. We've been through approvals in terms of MNRF, as well as Department of Fisheries and Oceans. The last hurdle to get through is Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks and the Species at Risk Division. So we're in the process of working with their biologists to determine if there's any kind of review that needs to be done, and what kind of protections in terms of operational things we need to do to ensure that there's no harm to any of the fish or wildlife that are in the area of the repair. The repair will require a dewatering of the area around the launch. Even at low water where the damage is, it's still underwater. So there is some dewatering that has to happen. And so I'm hoping we get through this in the next couple of weeks, and then from that point we can start to work towards making some construction plans.
Just on that, before you leave that, Kelly, is there going to be one lane open all the time, or is the boat launch going to be closed till August?
Yeah, we'll once we get a better handle on how long it'll take, and we're not thinking it'll take more than a week or two, but yes, the whole launch will have to be closed for a period.
That is being used right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, probably right now, you may or may not, depending on what you're launching, you may or may not notice where
The
the
big
hole
hole
is,
on the
because
right-hand side.
yeah, it's higher water. Although
Yeah.
if you've been down to the Ottawa River, it's a lot lower than it normally is.
Yes, it sure is. Yeah.
But yeah, it's more of a problem as the water gets lower through the season.
Okay, fair enough.
So yeah, well, I mean, we can't control the level in the river, but
No.
we'll just work with what we know.
Okay.
Under tourism services, well, you'll see a reference to our staycation hyper-tourism planning. We've worked on some different programs with economic development in terms of involving business and packaging products and bringing hyper-local, meaning sort of Renfrew County area tourism to our area through the pandemic. But now with the latest shutdown and the stay-at-home order, that's kind of delayed some of those plans. So all we can do is all we can do, and we'll try to ride out the next few weeks, and we'll make some decisions as we go along as to, the implementation of some of these programs that staff have worked so hard to put together. Under parks and facilities, you'll see there's a number of staff completed some training and some professional development. This is the kind of year where a lot of professional development in the parks and facilities area occurs. Of course, you'll notice that it's all virtual. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to virtual, but certainly the pros are people don't have to travel. And, the travel and the food and the hotels, and that's a big chunk of anybody that takes training out of town. So Zoom training is maybe not for everybody, but certainly the feedback's been fairly positive from people that have attended the training, and we're not letting COVID stop us from continuing with our professional development goals and objectives. You'll notice there's 3 in a row references just that time of year in March. Our Christmas decorations came down between the 15th and the 18th. Our toboggan hill and our outdoor rink season closed on March the 16th. Short season this year. By the time weather permitted us to have 4 or 5 inches of ice on our outdoor rink, we had only about 6 to 7 weeks of use, and then the warm weather just kind of slammed the door on us. So that's just the kind of spring we're having, I guess. It's hard to believe we're talking about fire bans in the early part of April, but that's just the reality of climate change, right? Our Indian Diamond backstop replacement started on April 1st. So if you've driven by on your way to the municipal office, you'll see that the backstop has been removed, and we're working through that project. Hopefully have it completed by the time it's required for ball season. If we have a ball season, I guess we could say right now, we just don't know. Our hall renovation started on today, and I'm well aware of it starting because the work's happening right over the top of my head in my office. But everything's lined up, and Mark thinks there'll be 2 to 3 weeks doing the job. We're acting as the general, and we've called in a number of trades to do the different components of the job, and yeah, it'll look real nice when we're done. And then lastly, I'll just reference a number of our fencing projects. Everything that was approved in our budget for this year has commenced, and you'll start to see some of those various projects complete themselves over the coming weeks. And just the last thing I'll reference under parks and facilities, our tennis courts, we have not opened our tennis courts. We've been getting a few calls about whether we're going to open them or not. Our weather is probably a month ahead of schedule. Staff were pretty hesitant in the discussions we've had around opening the tennis courts because it's in a fenced-in enclosure and COVID. To date, we've kind of talked about leaving our tennis courts closed until we get through this lockdown, stay-at-home order. You know, people, if they want to get out to exercise, they have lots of options. What we don't want to encourage is people congregating, and that's what we're going to end up with if we open the tennis courts. So we're going to leave them closed till May the 6th, and then we'll let the province kind of dictate whether we open them or not. Under program services, so we finished off our remaining winter program calendar. So you'll see there's a number of programs that operated during March. We have made application to our the CPRA Summer Employment Grant Program. We've had some success over the last number of years with that program in helping us get some of our summer positions. So we're hoping to be lucky again this year. And just lastly, you'll see, even though we're in a lockdown situation, a lot of planning is happening with respect to different events or our ability to maybe host some components of Civic Center days. Colin's looking at some different options and things we might be able to do, and he's having to kind of have a plan A, B, and C set aside depending on what level of restrictions we might have. But you know, even though we're in COVID, the work doesn't stop. We're still trying to develop some sort of activity or some kind of event or program that we'll be able to offer to our residents. A lot of it just depends on what restrictions will be at the time, and you know, whether we can jump on board with very little notice. Very frustrating exercise. Colin and Shalin might be the two most frustrated staff we have in the corporation, because everything they do ends up getting canceled or changed, or they have to figure out a different way of doing it. It's a lot of work and little reward at this point. Under rental activity, you'll see our halls getting lots of use. There's reason for that because it's big. And so people are renting it for small activities because they can spread themselves out, put together a COVID plan and adhere to that COVID plan. Some of our regular groups have been in on a weekly basis. And you'll see the Watch by Six group is, they're actually still in during the shutdown because they have provincial approval to operate as they train guide dogs. And so it's seen as an essential service. But most of our other programs that we're operating through March on a regular basis, week in and week out, renting the hall, of course, they're not permitted to do so right now. So, and I think I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that members might have.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Open it up for questions of members of committee. Teresa, and then Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Kelly. Kelly, just getting back to the closure of the boat launch. I suspect that I know there will be lots of advance notice and whatnot. And certainly if there are larger boats, we've got the option of Jubilee Lodge, but I'm just wondering if you might be able to pull together sort of some recommendations for the small boat launches, like the small fishing boats. I know there are lots of places that people can put a boat in and whatnot, just to give folks a bit of an option. Anyways, just because boating season is relatively short, and it's a very dedicated group of people, so they like to be out on the water. So anyways, but thanks for that. I know it'll be a really good end result to the project. Thank you.
We'll take a look at what options we have. It may be difficult to police in terms of, some boats can and some boats can't, but over the next few weeks, we'll be starting to get together in terms, we got to get through the species at risk review first, because if they come and say we need to do any kind of extensive review of species there, that may bite into our calendar and prevent us from moving ahead this year. But if we can move ahead, we'll take a look at our options. And I get it. It's a short season, but it's also the kind of repair that we do once every few decades, right? So, but we'll do our best to communicate way ahead of time. And if we can help people out through that period, we'll do what we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Kelly, with regard to the floor replacement and the boards and the plexiglass, what happened to the existing boards and plexiglass and stuff? I'm getting a lot of questions and I don't have any answers.
So we met with Laurentian Valley, who called us up and had interest in using the boards. I believe they're going to use them at an outdoor rink, one of their outdoor rinks. We didn't have a lot of time to negotiate because the boards had to come out when the project was going to start. The subcontractor doing removal needed to know. Normally when they remove the boards, they rip them out and they're hard on them, and a lot of it gets damaged because it's basically going to either to recycling or to landfill. If they're going to remove them in a way that somebody has a chance of reusing them, then they do it more gently. They also do it so that pieces that are common are kind of stacked in the same area, so that whoever goes to reuse them doesn't end up with a massive jigsaw puzzle. Kind of right down to the wire, Laurentian Valley got back to us and made us an offer of $11,000 through our surplus policies in the town. We moved ahead with that sale, and all the components of the old boards are now property of Laurentian Valley. We don't have to store them. Everything's been fully removed from the site.
Thank you.
Tom? Okay. I would have lost a bet on that one in terms of when we put the new boards in there, Tom. You remember?
I'm going to say 10 years ago, Kelly,
The boards?
since we replaced those boards. Those are not the original boards in there now.
No, I know, but Mark said they're 30 years old.
No, definitely not. We
Anyway,
had wooden boards in there with plexiglass, and these are all galvanized steel with the nylon cover. I think we did that, I'm sure, 10 years ago, maybe.
It's got to be more than 10. I've been here 10.
Well, okay, I'll go 15, but no more.
Okay.
I was just curious to ask you that because you're a hockey player and stuff like that. I was quite shocked when I asked Mark that question, just for interest, and he said it was 30 years. And I said, well, I'm going to ask Tom. Maybe I should pick up the phone and phone Brian.
That's the second set of boards we
Yeah. Okay, no problem. Go ahead, Kelly.
You're going to notice a big difference in the new boards. The technology's, like everything else these days, has come a long way.
Sure.
They're all made of extruded aluminum. The doors are a lot lighter. The hardware's got better engineering. Everything just works easier, looks nicer. You'll notice a big difference when the new ones are in, for sure.
Okay, fair enough. Any further questions on the report? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kelly, it's nice to see the bathrooms getting renovated upstairs in the Civic Center. I'm just wondering, since we live in a COVID world now, are all of the fixtures going to be no touch?
Yeah, Mark's looking at no touch, wherever he can put them in. Yeah, everything's kind of brand new and latest technology that's going in.
Okay, good to hear. Thanks.
Okay, fair enough. Further? Okay, no further questions. Any motion, please, to accept the report. Teresa, Murray, all in favor? It is carried. Thank you. CS 0221. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last time I was in front of council, Councillor Moens asked a question about how we were going to procure the condenser. And at that time, my response is, well, we were looking at tender, but we're also had just been aware of an opportunity through LAS or to use LAS for the service. So we have done our investigation, and in fact, through LAS, we do have an opportunity to procure refrigeration goods and services. So Simcoe Refrigeration has already gone through the procurement process with LAS for the services that they offer, which include what we are doing with our condenser replacement. So that contract is available to us. It saves us to go through the procurement process, and part of that contract provides for a 31% saving in labor costs. So, typically their street rate labor for an ammonia mechanic is $142 an hour. Through the LAS program, it's available to us at $98 an hour. So that makes a lot of sense to us. They're our existing service provider in terms of annual maintenance, spring and fall, and any troubleshooting that has to happen through the year. They're very aware of our plant. They work on it and have been working on it for decades. And so through the LAS program, we see that it makes a lot of sense to move forward in this fashion. Because it is a procurement over $10,000, we require council to do the award. So I've put a little short report together for you, and we'd like to proceed with the award as soon as possible. I'll be glad to answer any questions that council members might have.
Thank you, Kelly. I'll open up for comments, questions. Tom?
Thanks, Bob. Kelly, I'm glad to see we went through the LAS process. I think it's very beneficial, and I'll be willing to make a motion that we go forward with them.
Sure. LAS is becoming quite a facility or a lever of services for municipalities, a very wide range of products that they're beginning to offer, up to including products and tires and streetlights, as we know.
Yeah.
But now here, this is another option. So it's good to see that we're digging into that and saving the taxpayers money. So further questions on the report? Then Tom, you're moving this?
I am.
And it's seconded by Murray. No discussion, or is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried. Thank you. And then we'll go to the community budget. Kelly, is there anything you want to point out to us?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Mayor. You'll see that we're at the quarter point of 2021. Should be about 25% spent. We're only about 12% spent. It's been a slow early start to the season. That'll change though. There's a lot of construction going on right now and some big ticket items. So as those bills start coming in, things will level out. But for now, I really don't have anything to report.
Lots of expenditures, but not a lot of revenues coming in either, is there?
No.
That's the other side of the equation. Okay, fair enough. Any questions from members of council or committee? Seeing none, we'll receive that as information. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing that facility up and running again. Bright new, shiny ice rink.
It'll look slick this fall for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's Annette, the treasurer. Hi, Annette. How are you? Sitting
Good.
patiently in the back there.
Good
Okay.
evening.
I have, the first item is accounts payable. Any questions on the accounts payable before I ask for a motion to pay the bills? Seeing none, then I need a motion to pay the bills, please. James and Gary, all in favor? You can go ahead and pay the bills. Okay. FM03, where are we? FM03 2021, your report, Annette.
Okay, so you have in front of you my report. And this is just recommendations to either amend or to have amounts transferred into reserves or reserve funds. So for 2020, one of the amendments that's being made is the reserve administration is being reduced from 75,000 to 0 for the purchase of equipment. And this is just in regards to the server and hardware software purchase that was not completed in 2020. You have development charges transportation that is being amended from 2,807 to 0. And that's for the sidewalk construction of Scott Avenue. And this just is in regards to the fact that the no expenditure was made in 2020 for this item. Development charges transportation from 544,200 to being reduced down to $20,923.70. And this is for Portage Road construction. What this represents, as Portage Road was not completed, there was just a small amount of expenditure on that road. 50% of that expenditure could come out of development charges. So that's been reduced down to the amount shown. Development charges water, that's being changed from $481,189 down to $6,642.94. Again, that's for Portage Road construction. That was based on the actual expenditures, and the 70% funding that was could be permitted is where that number comes up. Is calculated from. Development charges sewage. Originally, the budget for 2020 had $609,245 to come from development charges. Based on the actual expenditures that were incurred, a portion of that was at 100% funded from development charges and a portion at 25%. We had to just adjust that from my original report that I filed as there was an adjustment in the expenditure cost. So that has been amended to $192,636.53. In regards to sewage life cycle reserves, we had originally in the budget had $584,058 coming out of the life cycle reserves. A lot of that was to now cover, we had the Portage Road and the Scott Avenue being completed. As that was not done in 2020, that amount is being reduced to 0. And lastly, we have an additional amount to be transferred into reserves for 2020. $1,134.50 is being transferred into the reserve administration. This is stemming from the accessibility committee. Made some purchase of some marketing items. That purchase was not completed in 2020 as everything needed to be finalized. So we are transferring some of their funds from 2020. It's going to be pulled out of reserve in 2021 to fund that purchase.
Thank you. So I'll open up for any questions of the report. No, everybody's happy. I don't know what we do without development fees. I can tell you. It comes in very handy, don't they? Right? All right. You see the recommendation just that the treasurer just went over. If you want to move forward with this, I need a motion of committee, please. Teresa, Tom, there's no discussion. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Annette. We now go to animal bylaw enforcement, animal control and bylaw enforcement. Admin 06-2021.
Thank you, Mayor Sweet. Just wanted to report that ProTech has delivered 5 animals in March to the SPCA. They delivered written and verbal warnings, again, for dogs running at large. So just a reminder to residents that they have to be kept on leash. Commissioners issued 62 parking infraction notices, as well as an additional 40 written warnings for residents for parking issues. Just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention there. And the commissioners has also issued an additional provincial offense notice for burning without a permit to a resident on Russell Street. And our licensing program continues. There was only 1 false alarm in March, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Don. I'll open it up for questions of the report. No questions? Commissioners seem to be working out quite well. Positive, for sure. You see the recommendation that council receives the monthly activity report for March as information. The motion on add 06-2021. Gary, seconded by James. No questions, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. Taxi license applications, Don. I'll mute myself.
Yes, so we've had 4 applications for the month of March, and all the required information has been provided, and recommending that that council adopts them.
Questions of the report? Seeing none, you see the recommendation. Need a motion, please. Tom, seconded by. Nobody wants to second this. Okay. Teresa, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed of any? It's carried. Thank you. Budget, administration, animal control, bylaw enforcement, and council. Annette, do you want to?
I have nothing to bring forth on that if there are any questions.
Everyone's behaving themselves, are they? Okay, any questions of the budgets? Seeing none, we'll receive that as information. With that, I need a motion to adjourn. I just seen if everybody was still with us. There we go. Anyway, there's a need to go into closed. The meeting be closed pursuant to 239 of the Municipal Act to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition, of land by the municipality or local board regarding offers to purchase land in the industrial park. That's the rationale for going into closed. I need a motion, please. Murray, James, all in favor? We are in a closed environment. Then I need a motion to adjourn. James and Gary, all in favor? We are now adjourned. Thank you very much, members of committee. We're out of here.